Hi.
Hi there. Welcome back to English for Specific Purposes. We are your hosts. I am Mr. Daryl.
And I'm Miss Thათია. მოგესალმებით. კეთილი იყოს თქვენი დაბრუნება ჩვენს ტელესკოლაში. მე თათია ვარ, ეს კი დერილია. And Mr. Daryl, what is the topic for today?
Something that might keep you out of jail or prison.
Really?
Law.
Okay, a very interesting topic, I think. And we have not talked about law at all, right?
No.
So I think that we're going to teach a lot of interesting things in this lesson, right?
New vocabulary, new ideas.
Yeah, okay. So, but before we look at the lesson, I think that we have to look at our agenda first. So what's on our agenda, Mr. Daryl?
Well, we'll have our usual discussion, always enlightening for me. We'll move from there to a list of vocabulary that we will use in the reading text as well.
Yes.
We have grammar to look at, as always, a major part of our section. We'll summarize at the end and give you some homework.
ვიდრე უშუალოდ გაკვეთილზე გადავიდოდეთ, მოდით ჩვენი გაკვეთილის გეგმას გადავხედოთ. გაკვეთილს დავიწყებთ, რა თქმა უნდა, შესწავლით. შემდეგ შევისწავლით ახალ სიტყვებს, ამის შემდეგ წავიკითხავთ ტექსტს. ამას მოყვება გრამატიკა. შემდეგ შევაჯამებთ გაკვეთილს და დავასრულებთ საშინაო დავალებით. Okay, let's get started. Mr. Daryl, here are some photos. Let's look at the photos and think, what are these photos related to? What do you think?
Well, all three of them are kind of clearly about a court of law, a courthouse.
Court, right. And what is the function of the court?
Well, a courthouse is to adjudicate or determine whether you are guilty of a crime or not, and whether you're going to jail.
They deal with some legal disputes.
Yeah.
To decide, who is guilty and who is not, right? And find the guilty party, maybe, right?
Hopefully.
Okay. Right, Mr. Daryl, I think that we have to learn some words connected with court and law. And we have first set of vocabulary, and the first word on the list is witness. Witness is a noun, and in Georgian it means თვითმხილველი მოწმე. And how would you define that word in English, Mr. Daryl?
Well, a witness is a person who sees an event happening. Generally, they've been on the scene and they were there.
Okay, so witness is a noun, and in Georgian it is თვითმხილველი მოწმე. And here we have an example. According to eyewitness, so we can use I together with witness. The robbery was carried out by two teenage boys. It means that someone saw them robbing the maybe bank or something, right?
Or someone on the street.
Okay. Well, now let's move on. And what is the next word, Mr. Daryl?
Our next word is evidence. It's a noun and it's evidence.
Evidence is a noun, as Mr. Daryl has said, and in Georgian it is სამხილი. How would you define that word, Mr. Daryl?
This can be a lot of things. It can be official documents, it can be statements, it can be any kind of fact that is used to prove something, whether it's true or false.
So evidence is really important in order to investigate a case, right?
And to get a true answer.
So evidence is a noun, and in Georgian it means სამხილი. And here is an example. A jury has heard all the evidence in this case.
That's important.
It's really important to hear the evidence. And the next word is jury. Jury is a noun, and in Georgian it is ნაფიცი საჯულები. So are these people who just make final decision about identifying the guilty person?
Yeah, in the common law system and other systems around the world, it's a group of your peers, people who are of your general social class, who pass decision on whether you have committed the crime or not. And they listen to evidence, they discuss, and in the end they give their verdict.
Oh, okay. So jury is a noun, and in Georgian it is ნაფიცი საჯულები. And here is an example. Not surprisingly, the jury found them both guilty. Now, what is the next word, Mr. Daryl?
Investigation. Investigation. It's a noun.
Investigation is a noun, and in Georgian it is გამოძიება. And how would you define that word, Mr. Daryl?
This is the process that policemen, for example, or any kind of overseer engages.
And
detectives, policemen, overseers, who engage in this process to find out the truth of the matter by looking at evidence, by looking at facts, and questioning witnesses.
Okay, so investigation is a noun, and in Jordan it means გამოძიება. And here we have an example. The bank conducted its own internal investigation into the robbery. So it's really important to carry out an investigation when a crime happens, right?
Yeah.
So our next word is lawsuit. Lawsuit is a noun, and in Jordan it means სასამართლო პროცესი, საქმე. So what would be the definition, English definition of this word, Mr. Derill?
A lawsuit is a problem that's taken to a law court instead of to the police, because he wants the problem to be settled by a judge or jury instead of detectives or police.
Okay, so lawsuit is a noun, and in Jordan it means სასამართლო პროცესი, საქმე, and here we have an example. 2 of the directors filed a lawsuit against their former employer. It means that the employer maybe sued the directors, and the directors filed a lawsuit. Okay, now I think that we have finished with the first set of vocabulary, and it's time to practice.
Yeah.
On the screen, we will see the definitions, and our task is to choose the best word for the given definitions, right?
All right. Do you want to go first, Ms. Thathia?
Yeah, of course, as usually, I want to lead
Here
the first.
you go. Objects, documents, or official statements that are used to prove something true or not, especially for legal or insurance purposes. What are they?
I remember you gave the definition of the word, and you said that this is called evidence. So everything, I mean, the documents and official statements that are used that something is true or not true is called evidence.
Well done.
Okay, now I will just read the definition for you, and the definition is the following. A problem taken to law court by an ordinary person or an organization rather than the police in order to obtain a legal decision. So what is it?
We did talk about that earlier, and it is a lawsuit.
And you are right, it's lawsuit. And now I will try. You have to read it for me.
Yes, a group of people who have been chosen to listen to the facts in a court action and decide whether a person is guilty or not guilty, or whether the claim has been proven.
And I know the answer. The answer is jury, because you told me that a group of people who have been chosen to listen to the facts in a court and to make the final decision, this is called jury. Okay, and I will read the text definition for you, and this is the following. The act or process of examining a crime, problem, statement, etc., carefully, especially to discover the truth. This process is called?
Because it's a process, investigation.
Yes, you're right. It's investigation, and I have a very easy task. I have one definition and one word, so it's easy for me to cope with this task. So here is a definition. Person who sees an event happening, especially a crime or an accident, is called a witness.
Very
so
well.
If I ever see somebody committing a crime, I will be the witness.
Yeah,
right?
you will be a witness, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Derill, I think that we have to move on to the next section, which is reading. But before we read a text, as usually, we have to study some words, right? Let's look at the list of the words we have. And the first word we have is liberty. Liberty is a noun, and in Georgian it means თავისუფლება. Thing that everyone likes and admires, right?
It's one of the best things about living in a society, the liberty, the freedom to live as you wish or go where you want.
Yeah, right. Liberty is a noun, and in Georgian it means თავისუფლება. And here is an example. For most citizens, liberty means the freedom of practice their religious or political beliefs. Okay.
Indeed.
And what is the next word, Mr. Derill?
It is a noun. Defense. Defense.
Defense is a noun, and in Georgian it means დაცვა. And Mr. Derill will define the word for us.
So in a law case in court, there are two sides. There's the prosecution, and then there's the defense. We're talking about the defense now. This is the side that is defending themselves against a charge brought against them.
Okay. So defense is a noun, and in Georgian it means δაცვა. And here we have an example. Now he says he's done nothing wrong, and I assume that will be his defense in court. Okay. Now let's move on. And the next word is?
Unjust. Unjust, it's an adjective.
It's an adjective, as Mr. Derill has said, and in Jordan it means usamartlo. Unjust. Usamartlo. And how would you define that word in English?
Well, I'd say that it was a situation that's not fair or that is morally wrong.
Okay. Unjust, it's an adjective. In Jordan it means usamartlo. And here is an example. New laws still protect employees against unjust dismissals. Okay.
Very unfair.
Very unfair. And now let's move on. And the next word we have is enact. Enact is a verb, and in Jordan it means dadgena migheba kanonis. And how would you say it in English? I mean, give details about the word in English.
Yeah, it's to put something into action, especially to make something a law.
Okay, so to enact is a verb, and in Jordan it means dadgena migheba kanonis. And here is an example. A package of economic sanctions is to be enacted against the country. And what is the next word, Mr. Derill?
Statute. Statute, and it's a noun.
It's a noun, as Mr. Derill has said, and in Jordan it means kanoni. Parlamentis mier damtkitsebuli. Statute. And how would you define that word, Mr. Derill?
It's a law that has been formally approved and formally written down.
Okay, and here we have an example. The salaries of most federal workers are set by statute.
So the government has decided by law what salary they can take.
Okay, right. And I think that we have one more word.
One more word.
And this is?
Discretion.
Discretion is a noun, and in Jordan it is sheetzebათ. Mokhmedebis tavisufleba. Discretion. And how would you define that word in English, Mr. Derill?
It's a good word. It's a subtle word. It's the right or ability to decide something. So when you have something at your discretion, you have the right to decide the situation.
Yeah, right. Discretion, and it's a noun. And in Jordan it is sheetzebāt. Mokhmedebis tavisufleba. And an example demonstrates how we can use the word. And here is an example. I leave the decision to your discretion. It means that you can decide.
You're leaving me the ability to decide.
Yes, you're right. And I think that we have finished with the set of vocabulary, and we can move on to the reading. But before we read a text, a very good question. When were the first laws made? Have you got any idea, how far it dates back?
Well, I think as long as society has existed, it has to have been around. So how long are the earliest societies going back to? Thousands and thousands of years ago?
And do you think that it was even before Christ?
Most definitely.
So we have information like this. By the 22nd century BC, Ur-Nammu, an ancient Sumerian ruler, formulated the first extant law code consisting of casuistic statements like if and then. Around 1760 before Christ, King Hammurabi further developed Babylonian law by codifying and inscribing it in stone.
Oh, I love those history lessons you gave us.
Yeah. Okay. And Mr. Derill, have you got any idea who writes laws?
Technically, it should be a legislator, a man whose job is to pass laws.
Yeah, lawmakers, right? And I think that it needs a lot of elaboration to write laws.
Yes, and technical specifications.
Yes. Okay, I think that now we are ready to read the text and find out interesting information. And let's get started. Even when the laws have been written down, they ought not always to remain unaltered. These words by Aristotle, the famous ancient Greek philosopher, could have been written to describe English law and its sources. Where else would you find constitutional laws without any constitution? Most people have heard of the Magna Carta. It's often described as the cornerstone of liberty and the chief defense against arbitrary and unjust rule in England by establishing for the first time a very significant constitutional principle, namely that the power of the king could be limited.
Oh, very important principle. Through the ages, this principle has continued to be upheld in spite of various monarchs, civil war, and riots, resulting in Parliament making itself sovereign and representing the will of the people. As a result, all legislative power is placed in the hands of Parliament. There is no legal limit to the power of Parliament, and the courts are bound by all legislation that is enacted by Parliament. So what is the role of the judiciary? The courts interpret the law, which means that although Parliament enacts the law, the courts decide how they are to be applied. These decisions are treated as precedents, and subsequent law courts will follow these decisions if they have similar issues to determine.
Oh, I have heard so many interesting things which I didn't know. Okay, this doctrine of precedent developed from common law, which itself is based on custom and dates from the time immemorial, or at least since the year 1189. Often before government wrote new laws, judges would apply local and ancient customs in order to ensure that judgments were consistent and relied on decisions made in previous cases. This has also led to the principle that a judge is bound by the decision of a superior court when reaching a decision in a similar case. Judges do not exercise their discretion in an arbitrary way by resting their judgments upon the general principle of case law and can have influence upon the development of enacted law. Accordingly, the courts can exercise a considerable degree over the practical application of statutes, although governments make new laws which modify or clarify the common law.
Well, Ms. Thataia, you haven't been in a law court situation before, have you?
No, by the way, I have not, and I wouldn't like to have any cases linked to
It sounds like a very stressful situation. You never want to be in a situation like that.
Really, really, but just I have got useful information which is necessary to know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We have finished the text, and I think that we have to practice and find out how well we remember some points from the text, okay? We'll see some statements, and we have to decide whether the statements are true or false.
Would you like to go first?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, here we go.
So what is the statement?
Power of the king was limited by the Magna Carta.
Yes, and I remember it because it was surprising for me when I read, so I think that it is true. Because we read, most people have heard of the Magna Carta. It's often described as the cornerstone of liberty and the chief defense against arbitrary and unjust rule in England by establishing for the first time a very significant constitutional principle, namely that the power of the king could be limited, which was like...
It's one of the best things England has ever given us.
Yes.
Besides the Beatles.
Now I think that you have to try. I will read the statement and you decide whether the statement is true or false.
I'm ready.
You're ready. So the statement is the following. Parliament's powers are limited. What do you think?
Well, in Canada, I'm familiar with the parliamentary system, and I believe this answer is false.
And you're right. There is no legal limit to the power of Parliament, according to the text. Okay, and I think that we have one more statement.
And I will read it.
And I will try.
The decision of one court does not affect another. Is that true?
I think that's not true, definitely. It's false, because I remember we read precedent means that a judge is bound by the decision of a superior court in a similar case.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and one more statement, and I will read the statement, you decide whether it's true or false. The court decides how the law enacted by the parliament must be applied. Do you think that this is true or false, Mr. Derill?
The court, yeah, that makes sense. Yes, I'll say true.
You are right, and we read the courts interpret the law, which means that although Parliament enacts the law, the courts decide how they are to be applied.
Well, Ms. Thათია, I think we're ready to be lawyers now.
Yeah, we are going to be lawyers. No, at least we can start learning law.
Or we can watch detective shows and feel more confident.
Yes. And Mr. Derill, I think that we have finished with the reading part and it's time for grammar. And what is the topic of grammar today?
Well, we're going to do conditionals.
Again, conditionals, yes. because there are some things we have to talk about, right?
There are many parts to a conditional.
With conditionals. So today we're going to talk about second conditional, and when do we generally use second conditional?
Second conditional, well, in impossible or unlikely situations or hypothetical situations, using the present or the future and their results in the present or the future. Another situation is when you give advice to people.
Yes, you're right. And what is the form? How can we form second conditional?
Well, you've always got to start with the if, of course, and then it's either the past simple or past continuous, followed by would and the bare infinitive.
Okay, so it means we need if plus past simple or past continuous, and in the second part we have would plus infinitive, and here we have examples. If you worked in that company, you would have more opportunities to get promoted. So, do you work in that company according to the sentence?
No.
You don't. So it's a hypothetical statement. So I imagine what would you do if you worked. So if you worked in that company, you would have more opportunities to get promoted. But you don't have these opportunities because you don't work, right?
Like working for Elon Musk or something.
Yes, okay. And the second one, if I were you, I would change this job. In this case, I'm giving you the advice. Mm-hmm. So we mentioned that we use second condition also to give advice. If I were you, I would do that. Mm-hmm. One important thing in the second part, instead of would, we can also use modal verbs, might and could. For example, if we were older, we could go on holiday on our own. But it means that we are not older, we cannot go on holiday on our own, so this is a hypothetical situation and we use second conditional here, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. But instead of would, we used could here. And another thing, we can also use could in the if clause, and here it means was or were able to do. For example, if I could drive, I'd buy a car. So it means that I cannot drive, I'm not going to buy a car.
You don't need a car.
Yeah, I don't need a car. It's a hypothetical situation, and again, we use second conditional here. Mm-hmm. And now we are going to talk about third conditional. And when do we generally use third conditional, Mr.?
Well, hypothetical conditions in the past that end up also in the past.
All right, and about the form, we use if plus past perfect, or simple or continuous, plus would plus have plus past participle. And I will give you an example. If he had won the competition, he would have built the new shopping mall. Is it about past, present, or future?
Past.
It's about past. Mm-hmm. Okay, so did he win the competition?
No.
No. And did he build a new shopping mall?
He did not.
So nothing can be changed. It is hypothetical situation about past, which cannot be, the result cannot be changed. Mm-hmm. Okay, we are just thinking how things would have been yeah. in this situation. And the second example, if we had anticipated the risks, we would have saved the company. So does it mean that we anticipated the risks?
No, we didn't.
We didn't. So could we save the company?
No, we didn't.
No, we didn't. Okay. And one more thing, we can also use might, could, or should instead of would, depending on the meaning.
Oh,
and here is an example.
Helping words.
If I had done some revision, I might, or could, or should have passed the exams. But I did not do any revision and I couldn't pass the exam.
Oh, you're a bad student.
Okay, so it shows the regrets, okay? And I think it's time to practice. Here we have sentences with options and we have to decide which option would be the right option. So the first statement is the following. I would call or would have called him now if I were you. It seems to be advice.
But I would say I would call him if I were you.
Yes, we talked that when we want to give advice, we use second conditional, right? Okay, and you're right. And now let me try. I wouldn't have bought it if I did not try or had not tried it. It means that I have bought it. It happened in the past, and I want to express my regret. So I would say this sentence like this: I wouldn't have bought it if I had not tried it.
Oh.
Okay. And I'm right. Okay. Now one more for you.
We would find a solution if either you have given or gave us advice. Well, so this is a hypothetical situation in the present, so it has to be the following. We would find a solution if you gave us advice.
You're right, as always. Okay, and the next one for me, she would be or would have been pleased yesterday if you had gone with her. So as it is about yesterday, it's about past, it's a hypothetical situation about past. I think that I need to use here third conditional, and I would say she would have been pleased yesterday if you had gone with her. So I didn't go with her, so he wasn't pleased. So it's kind of regret about past, and I think that I'm right. Now it's the end of the exercise, and I think that it's time to wrap up the lesson, Mr. Darrow.
Indeed, we looked at vocabulary, as you remember, for the reading text. We did the reading text itself, quite interesting. And we moved on to grammar. We talked about the third and the second conditionals.
Okay, very interesting. I think that the vocabulary we learned was really, really useful for everyone, right? ეხლა კი შევაჯამოთ ჩვენი გაკვეთილი დავიწყეთ მცირე შესწავლით, შემდეგ შევისწავლეთ ახალი სიტყვები, სამართალთან დაკავშირებული ახალი სიტყვები, შემდეგ წავიკითხეთ ტექსტი, რომელიც ასევე სამართალთან იყოს დაკავშირებული და შემდეგ განვიხილეთ გრამატიკა, პირობითი წინადადებები. ახლა კი დროა დავასრულოთ ჩვენი გაკვეთილი, but I think that one thing is left. This is homework.
Yeah.
So what will be the homework for our students, Mr. Darrell?
Well, we would like you to write a paragraph about what you think is the most important human right.
Okay, and I think that everybody would write about liberty.
Many people would, I think.
Many people, okay. And where can people upload the homework, Mr. Darrell?
Good question. They can send it to the address that's on the screen right now.
Okay, so I think that we have to look for the assignments people are going to send.
Hopefully from all the little lawyers that are out there.
Yes, but now at this moment we have to say goodbye to the audience. We have finished our lesson, we have to say goodbye, but stay with us and keep on learning.
Until next time, goodbye.
Bye.